Man, I swear, just when I think maybe Ubisoft is like learning their lesson or whatever and making adjustments to their design philosophies or publishing philosophies, they just come back to surprise me by making yet another, in my opinion, terrible decision. The latest news, as you can see in this report from Insider Gaming, is that the team behind Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown has reportedly been disbanded. This comes from a French journalist, Guatos. I'm not familiar with that individual, but they have a pretty solid track record. Everybody is reaching out to Ubisoft for confirmation or denial. Nothing yet, which usually tells you all you need to know. So it's just, I mean, again, I'm mad. I'm mad. If you're not familiar, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was probably the best game that Ubisoft made in the last like half decade. It is really good. It's a 2D Metroidvania game with lots of interesting abilities, combat that's challenging and yet fair, and they've had some really amazing offerings with free updates and support after the game came out that have improved the game even further. But having said that, the game is reviewed really well, but it didn't sell really well. I mean, it's a 2D Metroidvania game. These games don't exactly fly off the shelves when they're priced at like AAA price points. Shocker, I know. In addition, it only released on Steam in August. Prior to that, it was only available on Ubisoft Connect after launching earlier this year. And when you combine all this together, the $40 price point, the limited access on Ubisoft Connect, and everything else, it was never going to be like a massive seller. Like, this was not going to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue or anything like that. And yet, it seems like Ubisoft executives are disappointed with its performance. The report states that Ubisoft has disbanded the team behind the game after it failed to reach internal expectations. A sequel for the game was pitched, but the company rejected it. The report claims that a decision about the future of the game was decided, quote, a few weeks after release, end quote. It was made clear by Ubisoft that after releasing DLC and cosmetics for the game, support would be done. It was also said that members of the core dev team fought for the aforementioned sequel and even more expansions. But Ubisoft didn't want another game because those higher up in the company said it would cannibalize the potential long-term sales of the first title. In other words, if they released another game and it did really well, that would prevent them from getting more sales out of this one. So they just decided to can the entire team and call it quits. It's amazing. And listen, I don't know how to explain this other than in like the most bare bones, simple way possible. Ubisoft, you guys have a goodwill crisis on your hands, okay? The reason why Ubisoft cannot get away with things other dev studios can get away with is because you have no goodwill with your customers. We can look at something like Dragon's Dogma 2 or other like Capcom games like Resident Evil 4 Remake that was really well received. Those games had in-game stores. They sold you things that affected gameplay, even though they were single-player games, right? But Ubisoft doesn't have any of that goodwill. And so when they try to do that with DLC in the form of expansions or new skins or pre-order bonuses or whatever, it doesn't go over well because the games usually are not masterpieces, and then they also have no goodwill, so everything just goes to crap. And in light of recent news of like a delay for AC Shadows, the fact they're removing the seasonal pass, the fact they're bringing AC Shadows to Steam on day one, all of these things start to suggest to me that, oh, maybe we're starting to think in a more pro-consumer way. Maybe we're going to try to win over some goodwill and build that back up by doing things that consumers like. That's great. And even though that may not save a game like Assassin's Creed Shadows, which has its own plague of maladies, let's just say, it still is a good move for them to start doing things that are intentionally trying to build up goodwill with their customers. Because in order to build up goodwill, you have to do things your customers like. Shocker, I know, imagine that. So I was hopeful they were on their way to doing that they were going to give a studio like this that made their best reviewed game in a long time, the most critically acclaimed game they've had in a long time, a game that everybody who plays it is like, wow, that came from Ubisoft. I was hoping they'd give that studio another game, a sequel or a spin-off or something, and they would let them go out. Maybe it's not the most profitable project, but it's like their Game of the Year contender project. It's the project they do to get that critical acclaim, even if it doesn't make the most money. But then we get this news that they're just canning the entire team. And it screams of when Xbox shut down Tango Gameworks before it was bought up by Kraft and later, like after the fact, where it's like, you guys have your best studio, like Tango Gameworks made Hi-Fi Rush, amazingly well-reviewed game. People loved it. And you're shutting down the studio out of nowhere. Like, that's no way to reward quality work. And that's the problem with a studio like Ubisoft doing this now, is like, why would developers work their asses off to put forward the best Game of the Year contender game possible, when even when they get a Game of the Year contender released, you just shut them down later because it didn't move enough units for you or whatever? Like, this is no way to retain talent or to attract talent. The best people in the industry won't want to work at Ubisoft because they know even if they produce some amazing stuff, they're just going to lose their jobs at the end of the day if it doesn't move enough units. It's just, this is no way to run a company full of artists. You know, this is how you run a company that's producing like crappy electronics. You know, like, oh, we made a knockoff iPhone and it didn't move many units, so we're gonna downsize that team and we're gonna move over to this other project. Then, okay, we get it. But in this case, you are trying to retain talent. You're trying to retain artists who need that support, and you're trying to also build up goodwill with your customers. And the one game you've released in the last half decade that was starting to build up that goodwill, now you're just abandoning it and moving on because it didn't get you enough sales and enough goodwill, I guess. It's just so freaking short-sighted. It's amazing. Listen, I get that this is a business. I take the opportunity every chance I get to mention that I have a degree in corporate finance. I understand the inner workings of budgeting projects like this better than probably any other gaming YouTuber out there. I just have a very particular lack of skills, but corporate finance happens to be one of them. So I get the business side of this. I understand that this probably didn't give you the best ROI. I understand that, but we're looking at the bigger picture. You are spending money now to build up goodwill so that in the future, you can put out really good games that maybe have a season pass, that maybe have an expansion, that maybe have a cosmetic here or there, but gamers will be okay with it because the game is so good and you've built up such goodwill that they can hand wave it away. Just like for Dragon's Dogma, Resident Evil 4, whatever, Silent Hill, I don't know if they had cosmetics or anything, but like all these other games that people love that might have DLC or things like that. But until you get to that point, you can't do those things and expect people to be okay with it. And I was hoping that this was the start of them chasing that goodwill and building it up by supporting teams that are doing great stuff, even if it's not the most profitable. But it seems like, you know, Yves Guillemot and the team over at Ubisoft Executive Suites or whatever, they are doing the same thing they've done for the last 20 years, and they just continue to make baffling decisions that shoot themselves in the foot. I can't say I'm surprised, but this is why I've said for a long time, even if Ubisoft is bought out, even if Ubisoft sells to Tencent and it's the Guillemot family and the Tencent corporation that own the whole company together 50-50 or 51-49, whatever it ends up being, even if that's the case, the Guillemot family is still in charge. And those are the people that have been making the horrible decisions that have led Ubisoft to this situation now. Like, do you really think that they'll be better with less oversight, with less pressure from investors to fix things? No, I think it just gets worse. It probably just gets more exaggerated or more Tencent inspired with in-game stores galore. Everything's gacha themed and it's just going to be super toxic. So listen, I am making this video just in case people at Ubisoft see it, and you can go to your boss and like, you don't have to be the bad guy. Share your boss this video, like just make them watch it over a lunch break or something. I know people at Ubisoft watch my channel and have seen my videos. Just please, for the love of God, if you are in a position of some level of influence, understand that Ubisoft needs to be winning back goodwill, and this is not how you do it. Punishing teams that did great stuff the best stuff that you've had in years is not a way to win good faith or goodwill, rather, from your customers. That's a way to actively tick off more of your customer base, because they are looking at this being like, oh, well, I really like that game, and now they took it away and I don't get another one. Okay, now I'm pissed. And then everybody else who didn't buy the game is like, I thought that was supposed to be really good, and they shut it down. Oh, well, and they'll move on. You know, it's so short-sighted. I don't really see the upside, especially because this was a smaller team. It's just, again, baffling. It's baffling, but that's so much of Ubisoft nowadays. So I wish everybody on the team the best of luck. I hope that everybody lands on their feet, because, you know, layoffs are always horrible, especially when they are, especially, you know, in my opinion, undeserved. And, you know, some layoffs make sense. This one is baffling to me. So there you go. But please, Ubisoft, understand, you gotta start winning back goodwill. Otherwise, you'll just keep falling deeper and deeper into the pit of despair. You gotta figure your crap out. And this would have been a great opportunity to do it, to start on that path of building the ladder to get yourself out. But you just burned the ladder down. Like, I just don't understand what you guys are thinking. But that's all from me. Thanks for watching. I love you. Subscribe, like the video, blah, or don't. I don't know. Thanks for watching. I'm bad at outros. Bye. The video's over. Go away. He took my thing.